All right, this is Defeating Adventism number 5, which follows the first 4, which were on the gospel message. If you haven't listened to those, let me encourage you to do that. This video is going to be kind of a short one and going to focus just on John 14:15 and how our Adventist friends look at virtually everything they read in the Bible when they see the word commandment or commandments through these glasses or lenses of a Seventh-day Adventist, which means they're looking through the Ten Commandments. We're going to have here a short dialogue between an Adventist and a Christian. But before we go into the dialogue, do me a favor and give me that thumbs up like on there so that we can ensure that our other Adventist friends get a chance to also see this video.
Good morning, neighbor. Where are you going this beautiful Saturday morning?
We are Seventh-day Adventists, and today, Saturday, is the Sabbath. We're going to church.
We go to church also, but we go on Sunday.
That's nice, but don't you want to follow Jesus? Jesus said in John 14:15, "If you love me, keep my commandments."
Sure, we want to follow Jesus, but I am not sure that is what he means by John 14:15.
I can't talk long because we have to get going, but Jesus did say that if we love him, we will keep his commandments. Today, we demonstrate the keeping of the commandments by keeping the fourth commandment, or the Sabbath.
I understand, and perhaps we can talk later when you have more time to talk about John 14:15 and the commandments.
So as you can see here, our Adventist friends have a lens by which they read all Scripture. And when they open up a Bible and they see the word commandments or command, they instantly think Ten Commandments. So with that in mind, is John 14:15, which uses the word commands, is it really a reference to the Ten Commandments? So let's look at an English language translation as well as the Greek as well as a transliteration. And you can see what I have here circled in red. And you can see my source for it down here in the lower left-hand corner. So when Jesus says, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments." The word commandments in this case, and you see the red arrow here, is entolos, which means, there's your Strong's reference number 1785, it's an injunction, an order, a command. So far it doesn't tell us it's the Ten Commandments, but it does tell us it's an order or command. So by clicking on that, by that I mean the lower left-hand corner of the previous slide, you can get this much more detailed information. Same word, transliteration, entole, definition, right? Injunction, order, command. But look what entole also means. Look under helps and word studies. It says what? It says, reach the end, consumption properly and end, focusing, end result, objective, command. Nowhere here do you see Ten Commandments. But what it does here say, though, is that, and this is true of any verse, of course, that it's context is important. So what's the context here? Just think of the verse again. Jesus said, "Keep my commands." He doesn't say keep the commandments. He said, "Keep my commands." Okay. Well, what are the commands of Jesus? Because Jesus has commands. For example, he said what? "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you," in Matthew 7:12. You got to be born again to see the kingdom of heaven in John 3:7. Jesus also takes and modifies the sixth commandment when he says, and if you read that in Matthew chapter 5, he says, basically he's talking to the crowd, and guys, look, you guys know it's written, don't kill, don't murder, that is. And he says, he modifies it by saying, you know what, but if you have anger in your heart to such an extent, you are indeed murdering someone in your heart, and you are guilty of this commandment. Then he does it again right after that and says, you know that it's written, don't commit adultery. But he says, you know what? If you look upon a woman with lust in your heart, you've committed adultery with her in your heart. Jesus is giving commands that are above and beyond the Ten Commandments. And you know what? Jesus has scores of other commandments. I could have made this video 90 minutes long, just giving you the commands of Jesus. But I thought these 4 would be good enough. But these 2 in particular, where Jesus modifies the Ten Commandments and actually increases the requirements that were given in the Mosaic Law. So with that in mind, think about this in Deuteronomy 4:2, where God is talking to Moses and he says this, "You shall not add to the word that I command you, nor take from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God that I command you." God is telling Moses, don't you dare change anything I have given you in writing. But what did Jesus just do? He added to the requirements of the Ten Commandments. You know why? Because Jesus can do it. Because Jesus is God. And that's exactly what he did. Okay, so the question ought to be asked, well, if in Tole and the commands of Jesus are not the Ten Commandments, then what word, Greek word, let's stick with the same author, would John use if he wanted to cite the Ten Commandments? Remember what I said earlier, context. Let's look at John 1:17. Read the orange text along with me here. It says, "For the law through Moses was given." Context? What law was given through Moses? We know that law is Exodus chapter 20, Deuteronomy chapter 5. It's the law. It's the first 5 books of the Old Testament. It's not just the Ten Commandments. It's the first 5 books of the Old Testament. And that word is nomos. It's not in Tole. You already see here a difference between John 14:15, the commands of Jesus in Tole, and John 1:17 and nomos, the law. 2 different words. Now look at the definition for nomos. Nomos, transliteration, nomos, definition, that which is assigned, usage, law. And look what it says here, what I underlined in red. Nomos is used of the law in Scripture. Emphasis on the first 5 books of the Scripture. So when you see the word law, or we could even see that if we find other words in the New Testament, it could be commands or commandments. It's the first 5 books of the Mosaic Law. It's not just the Ten Commandments separated out from it. It's the entire law. That's how the Bible is written. So when we're looking at John 1:17 and the law given through Moses, it's the entire law as given through Moses. So you can see here that the commands of Jesus are not the Ten Commandments. In this case, on the screen in front of you, the law given through Moses is indeed the Ten Commandments plus actually the other 4 books of Scripture, the first 5 books of the Old Testament law. So in summary, John 14:15, it's not a reference to the Ten Commandments because you don't see nomos used for it. Both the context and the original language prove that fact. John 14:15 is a reference to the commands of Jesus, and those commands are in Tole. It's not nomos because Jesus has a lot of commands. We only looked at 4. So to follow Jesus is to follow his commands, which exceed the requirements of the Ten Commandments. So if you are in a religion and you're very proud of the fact that we follow the Ten Commandments, you know what? You're not following Jesus. You're not following the Bible because Jesus has many commands, and some of his commands exceed what's written in the Ten Commandments. So you need to have an accurate understanding of when you see commands and law and commandments in the Holy Scripture, that sometimes they are indeed commands, they're laws, they're secular, they're not a reference to the Ten Commandments, and sometimes they are a reference to the Ten Commandments. So to my Adventist friends, don't ever use John 14:15 as a reference to the Ten Commandments because it's not. And in doing so, you're not handling the Scripture correctly. And the Scripture tells us what? To do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who has no need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth. Let's rightly handle the word of truth. Use John 14:15 in its right context, which is follow the commands of Jesus. And I say, yes, we should follow the commands of Jesus. And that verse does not say the Ten Commandments.